be known servants ukuba accountability is non-negotiable. Because once you have accountability, the ones that are in power are able to govern kakuhle. As you have seen, asidlali nge-accountability. And people must know you are going to take imali. Trust, we are there as the ATM, we will hold you. Ukuba, you are going the Middle East, landing up eBulembu without following the proper protocols, we are going to hold you accountable. If you are going to be a bank and you are going to manipulate the rand and cause widespread poverty to the millions of citizens who end up taking their lives because they cannot pay these loans that they've taken from these banks, we are going to hold you accountable. There is no way in which all of these departments are going to operate without accountability. We need to ask ourselves a question on this question of rand manipulation. Where was the Reserve Bank? Why did it take the Competition Commission to pick up ukuba the rand was manipulated? Whereas the Reserve Bank has got a mandate of protecting the financial integrity and the monetary policy of our country. Where was the Reserve Bank? That is why we are saying ukuba the state must do its work, and we are there as the ATM to make sure that all of that happens. And under the ATM government, we are going to lead a country that has uninterrupted service delivery. And we are going to make sure that our government is corrupt-free. And we are going to make sure ukuba grants are delivered on time. And grants are going to be delivered in the nearest location of the beneficiaries. You can't have abantu abadala having to take 4 or country is currently generating power using coal. We've got coal reserves that are more than 400 years in our country. Currently, each and every day, as we speak now, there are tons of trucks as here at Richards Bay transporting our coal. And this coal is going to Europe to provide electricity in Europe. But up in South Africa, we have to contend with 6, 8 or 10 hours a day without electricity. The reason why we have load shedding, it is because the power stations are not maintained. The power stations are there, but they are not maintained. As the ATM government, we are going to invest in the maintenance and the servicing of the power stations. Because we cannot be building Imodupi costing billions, and Imodupi is using coal, and Apa Sikalelwe ukuba are going to move away from coal. Whereas Europe and the other countries are taking coal from us every day. And if it happens, ukuba we need to move away from coal, what will happen to our people in Mpumalanga? Because the economy of Mpumalanga is dependent on coal. That is why, as the ATM, let it be known, ukuba, we do not agree with this thing, ukuba, we need to move away from coal. We need to invest in clean coal technologies, not moving away from coal. And we are going to make sure, ukuba, the SOEs, all of the state-owned enterprises, they pay market-related prices for each and every service that they are procuring. Currently, Eskom is paying over 1,000 rands per ton of coal from these private companies that have got evergreen contracts with Eskom, whereas the NESA recommended prices, it is 300 rands per ton of coal. The reason why Eskom and most of these SOEs are needing bailouts, it is because of the evergreen contracts. It is because we are paying higher prices than the market-related prices. That is why, as an organization, the first thing that we are going to do is to review all of the contracts and set aside all of the evergreen contracts that our SOEs are having. And lastly, on this issue, we are going to reposition South Africa as a gateway to Africa by making sure ukuba our ports, our road, our rail infrastructure is properly maintained. Previously, when companies wanted to bring their goods to the continent, they used to come to South Africa because we had excellent infrastructure. But currently, we do not have any infrastructure. That is why, as an organization, we are saying that is the top of the priority aid. On the question of royal and faith leaders, we are saying, ukuba, royal and faith leaders currently are not given meaningful space in nation building and the governance of our country. If you were to compare that to this country called the United Kingdom, there are some decisions that the Parliament and the Prime Minister cannot take without the consultation and the blessing of the British monarch. But come to our country, you find that our kings, our queens, do not have a say in the governance of their own people. We are saying as the ATM, that is a problem. We are also saying it is a problem that we've got unequal treatment of royalty. And that creates an illusion, ukuba amakumkani ethu akalingani, whereas uThixo, in our view, ubabeke ngokulingana because ubenze bonke bazinkumkani. That is why you are saying, ukuba thina, we need to change all of that and make sure ukuba there's equal treatment of ikumkani zethu. Also, the indigenous spiritual homes and traditional churches are neglected and sidelined. And also, we've got a problem, especially in KZN, whereby there's a targeted killing of the royal leadership. Each and every day, you wake up, ukuba kukhona inkosi ebuleweyo eKZN. That is a problem. So our commitment in this regard as an ATM, we're saying we're going to give full recognition, respect, dignity, and support to all kingdoms, chiefs, kings, royal leadership in the governance of Abantu Bab. And we are going to put in place systems to ensure that all of the royal kingdoms that were destroyed by the colonial regime are reinstated and formally recognized. And we are going to capacitate and provide necessary support for royal leaders to handle conflict and dispute in their localities. And we are going to promote equitable recognition, respect, and support to all of the religious formations. And we are going to ensure ukuba the African indigenous spirituality, spiritual institutions, traditional healers are recognized, respected by the government in the same manner in which the mainstream religious organizations are respected. And we are going to ensure ukuba the African indigenous spirituality is taught from the primary schools to higher institutions of higher learning because African spirituality is our way of life as Africans. And we are going to ensure ukuba we protect and promote freedom of religion and family integrity. And we are going to ensure ukuba the faith leaders and royal leaders drive the moral regeneration program in schools, juvenile prisons, and communities. We've got a problem of immoral degeneration in our country. The unfortunate incident that we saw upper eNyobeni last year when abantwana bethu passed on because they were consuming alcohol at the young age of 13 years means ukuba we've got a problem. Because ukuba we do not build the moral character of our country, it means the country does not have a future. That is why we want the royal leadership and the faith leadership to play a meaningful role in building the moral character of our country. And we are going to provide land and support to churches. On the question of land, rural development, and food security, the first issue that we have is that there's landlessness amongst the African majority and high levels of land that are kept by the minority. And there's a lack of development in the rural areas. And we've got a food security that is anchored on the private sector. If food security that is anchored on the private sector means ukuba most of the farms are owned privately by a few farmers. And these farms are the ones that are working with retailers in producing and distributing food. We're saying as the ATM, we need to change all of that. And the manner in which we are going to change all of that is that we are going to make rural communities to be vibrant, sustainable, and economically active. And we are going to create jobs in the rural areas and make it sustainable for abantu to stay in the rural areas instead of seeking better opportunities as dolopini. And we are going to work with royal leadership to ensure sustainable rural development programs. And most importantly, we are going to embark on a farming revolution to ensure that all households are able to farm. Sikhula kukhona amasimi, sikhula kulinywa ezigadini, sikhula urhulumente eprovida itractor ukuba makulinywe. But currently, none of that is happening. We're saying as the ATM, next year, on the top of the priority yethu, is that immediately we ascend to the union buildings next year. On the question of farming, we are going to make sure there is no land apho sikwazi ukutyala khona ekungazutyalwa khona. Our country has so much Arab land that is sitting idle. We are going to make it a point, all households ziyalima, because we want to put into practice what was said by Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara said, we need to consume what we produce. What we are saying as the ATM, masitye ukutya okulinywe sithi. We are not going to have umhlaba apho sikwazi ulima khona singalimi. Akho mntu ungazulima, uthanda ungathandi uzolima. And okulima kwakho uzoncediswa by the assistant agricultural practitioners. There's more than 100,000 of young agricultural graduates in our country. They do not have jobs because there is no work in that space. We are saying as a party, those agricultural graduates are going to spearhead this farming revolution by assisting each and every person to farm. You know, the reason why some of abantu are getting sick, it is because some of these foods that they are buying, they are ukutya that are not really healthy. But we're not going to get into that debate now. But rest assured, when you eat the food that you have planted in your own garden, health awaits you. That is why we want you to eat what you have planted as a citizen. And we are going to ensure there's expropriation of land without compensation to ensure food security, adequate human settlements, and economic participation of the natives. And the last one on this pillar 7, it is the issue that we've got so many farms or emerging farmers in our country, particularly African farmers. But you find that their produce does not have a space in these retailers. Because a retailer in Queenstown, a retailer in Port St. John's would rather want to buy produce in Free State or another province. As the ATM was saying, ukuba kukona a retailer, whether it's ShopRite, it is Spar, it is Pick and Pay, it is Woolworths. If there's such a retailer, Upper Emonti, 50% of their produce must be sourced from local farmers. We are not going to allow a case whereby our emerging farmers do all of this work, but they are not going to be given space. In Botswana, just next door, there is a law, okanye it is law, ukuba all of these retailers, they must buy 50% of their produce from local emerging farmers. The same thing must happen here, because in Botswana, it is yielding good results. On the question of education and skills development, we're saying ukuba we've got an education system that is not responding to the needs of the economy. We've got a very high drop-up rate of our learners. And we've got infrastructure in our schools that is dilapidated. We've got learners that cannot read for meaning or read for understanding. And that is a failure of the early childhood development. And we've got an outdated curriculum that is producing job seekers instead of job creators. We are saying as the ATM, our commitments are as follows. We are going to ensure a quality education system that is free, compulsory, transformative, and is able to respond to the needs of our economy as well as our mineral wealth. The reason why we want to tie the education system to the mineral wealth, it is because uThixo usibeke in the southern tip of the continent, and he has given this southern tip of the continent gold, platinum, coal, manganese, and all of these resources. But why is it that almost all of our students, all of our learners, they've never even seen something that is called a gold? There is no learner in our schooling system that is able to refine a diamond into the product that is used. We are saying as the ATM, ukuba, we need to educate or have an education system that speaks to our mineral wealth so that we do not have to go and export raw materials and they come back to us as expensive as finished products and Tina who are just consumers. And we're going to accelerate a free skills-based decolonized education system that promotes entrepreneurship so that we do not produce job seekers. We want to produce job creators. And we are going to deal with this corruption ekunefsas. It cannot be that our children cannot get money to go to school, whereas UNEFSAS is funding close to 150,000 ghost students. Ghost students meaning akukho mfundi, akukho nto, but they say they are funding 150,000 students, whereas those people, zimali eyakubo. We are going to deal decisively with that corruption epakunefsas. And we are going to ensure ukuba the buildings in the inner city are able to be transformed into world-class student accommodation for our learners. Because it cannot be that our learners are going to struggle with accommodation, whereas there are buildings in the inner city. Some of those buildings are hijacked. Some of those buildings, and all of these things, we are going to convert all of those buildings into student accommodation. And we are going to increase infrastructure development, in infrastructure investment, which is libraries, skills development centers, other educational facilities in the townships and the villages. Because we, as an organization, we can't accept this normality. Ukuba, when you go to a township, you are most likely to find a tavern instead of finding a library. You are most likely going to find a smokolo than to find a skills development center. We are saying, Ukuba, we need to invest heavily in libraries, skills development centers in the respective townships. And we are going to make sure, Ukuba, we improve the quality of the infrastructure in our schooling system. Because when you go to our public schools, they are depressed in public schools because the toilets are not working and the windows are broken. When it's winter, it's cold. Abantwana are cold simply because the infrastructure does not give an infrastructure that is conducive to learning. Go to the private school, utusangena payana. You see, but this is an environment of learning and your mind gets to be opened. Whereas when you go to the public schools, the opposite happens. We are going to correct that as the ATM. And we are going to reinstate and prioritize sports, arts and culture programs in schools in order to facilitate holistic development. There can't be this thing that we see now whereby sports are sadlalwa in our schools. We are going to put a very, very strong investment in terms of the sports. And we are going to reopen the teacher colleges that we used to know so that there are rigorous training programs to ensure Ukuba the educators are well equipped and with the necessary skills and knowledge. We are going to deal again decisively with crime in the schools. It can't be that we are going to have teachers that are afraid of learners. We are going to make sure, Ukuba, all of the schools, we deal decisively with crime because abantwana that go to school must not fear when they are at school. Our young teachers, when they are in school, they must not fear their learners. That is why we need to deal with the problem of crime. And we are going to involve again the royal and faith leadership in terms of building the moral character of the learners. On the question of youth and early child development, the reality is that there's lack of economic opportunities for young people. And there's hopelessness and widespread depression amongst young people, particularly those who are above the age of 35, because the laws that are there, they make young people that are above the age of 35 as if are neglected. Because all of the funding opportunities for businesses, all of the job opportunities, kuba khona that limitation near age 35. And there's widespread alcohol and substance abuse for abantu abacha. And we are going to, as an organization, as a solution, prioritize early childhood development facilities from the ages of 0 up until 7 years. And we are going to train and fund our young people to be entrepreneurs instead of becoming job seekers. We are going to prioritize the holistic development of the youth, addressing not only the academic qualifications, but the practical skills, resilience, mental health awareness, and emotional health, as well as problem solving. And we are going to engage with educational institutions, private sector, community engagement, community organizations to create a collaborative ecosystem that supports youth development. On the question of sustainable human settlements and basic services, we are saying ukuba there's a problem now of communities that are deprived of clean, safe water. There's lack of quality living facilities that are closer to the areas of economic activity. And there are housing backlogs, social and economic segregation. And we've got people that have to cross rivers in order to access schools as well as hospitals. And we have many informal settlements which do not have quality, safe living. And as a solution to that, as an organization, we are going to provide safe, clean water for the citizens. We are going to speed up the provision of title deeds for all of the land and houses that the people own. And we are going to drive the economic development in the rural areas so that people are not forced to move to the urban areas for economic opportunities. And we are going to provide housing that is inclusive, integrated with provision of social and economic amenities such as schools, community halls, healthcare facilities, parks, recreation centers, places of worship, as well as job opportunities. And most importantly, we are going to expropriate all of the hijacked, dilapidated inner city buildings to be transformed to world-class, affordable, quality living facilities situated to the places close to economic activity. You will recall that what apartheid did, it took abantu to the places that were further from economic activity. People bethu have to travel 40, 50 kilometers in order to go to work, simply because the apartheid government did that. We're saying, ukuba, we cannot have the inner city buildings being defined by lawlessness, being defined by being hijacked. Those inner city buildings must be defined by world-class accommodation so that a person does not have to wake up at 5 in the morning if they want to get to work at 8 a.m. And this will also solve this problem of our parents not being able to parent, because abazali now need to leave their homes at 5 a.m. ukuze bafike emsebenzini ngo-8. And when they leave their work at 5 p.m., they only get home at 8 p.m., meaning they've got no time to spend with their children. And the parenting of their children is now left to the social media. It is left to abanye abantu. That is why in this formation, in this program that we're going to have, it will assist us. It will assist to restore the family unit. On the question of health and social services, there is poorly managed health and underfunded public health systems. There is a dire shortage of medicine, essentials for quality healthcare facilities. There is aging public healthcare infrastructure. There is lack of access of healthcare, especially in rural areas. And there's a neglect of indigenous healing practices. Now, to solve all of this, as a part, we are going to deliver quality, affordable social services to all of the citizens. And we are going to make it worthwhile for all of the health practitioners, whether it is doctors and nurses, to be able to practice in health facilities located in rural areas, so that ungabi nogqirha abangafuni uyosebenza ezilalini. It needs to be made worthwhile for them to service abantu in the villages. And we are going to make sure ukuba there are mobile health clinics that are brought to the villages, so that abantu do not have to travel many kilometers to access clinics. And we are going to make sure ukuba we prioritize the issue of the clinical associates and make sure ukuba the recommendations of the former public protector are implemented in that regard. And we are going to invest in herbalists and clinical education, and we empower the indigenous healers. And there's going to be full employment of environmental health practitioners throughout the country in order to deal with this problem of fake, expired, and rejected goods that are sold to our people. We've got a problem of our people being sold foods that are not worth human consumption. Now, when we hire these environmental health practitioners, they are going to inspect all establishments to make sure that there is no food that is sold to the people that is not safe for human consumption. And we are going to make sure that there's a wide-scale crackdown on all of the fake doctors that are masquerading as registered medical practitioners. Currently, there are many people that are practicing in our communities. We are going to make sure that thing is going to be a thing of the past. And most importantly on this pillar, we are going to make sure sanitary towels are free. The sanitary towels are going to be free. And we are going to focus especially in the provision of free sanitary towels in the townships and the villages. Because impilo yabantu ababhinqileyo is a top priority for us. On the question of empowerment of women and other vulnerable groups, we are saying there are high rates of gender-based violence and there's unequal representation in leadership roles and as well as wage gaps. And we are saying as a party, we are going to implement and strengthen legislation to combat gender-based violence and femicide, ensuring stricter penalties for perpetrators. And we are going to enforce a principle at equal work, equal pay. There is no way you are going to be doing the same work, but because one is a male, is going to be paid more. The other one, because they are a female, they are going to be paid less. Those companies that are discriminating, they must know under the ATM government that discrimination will be a thing of the past. And we are going to establish specialized units with law enforcement to handle cases of gender-based violence and child abuse promptly and sensitively. And we are going to advocate for accessibility standards in public spaces and workspaces to ensure inclusivity for all of the people living with disability. And we are going to ensure we develop and enforce policies that encourage empowerment of individuals with disabilities in all various sectors. On the question of the economy, we need servants to realize the first problem with our economy in our country is that we've got an economy that is dominated by oligopolies. Our country's economy is under the hands of very few companies. And you find that all of these companies are all owned by few families. Now, these oligopolies in all industries, they are dominating almost 90% of the market share. That is the first problem. Now, this oligopoly monopoly economy that we're having creates the high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in our country. And we've got a problem as well of a mineral wealth that does not translate to wealth for our people. You are going to go to Mpumalanga, they'll tell you, Ukuba, we are the province of coal. But when you look at the lives of the people in Mpumalanga, you do not see the wealth of coal. Rather, you see the sicknesses that are coming by the very same coal. That is a problem. And we've got a problem of a government spending that is pro-big business. The government has got a budget over 2 trillion rands per annum. And this government is spending more than 80% of that budget to big business. Small businesses need to scramble for more than 20% of the market share. And we've got a problem again of rand manipulation. The banks in our country are so arrogant to an extent that they can manipulate the rand, and the Reserve Bank will do nothing, and the government will do nothing. You know, there's a report that is speaking about the rand manipulation, not even something that has been said by the Minister of Finance. Simply because the banks have got so much power over the government. And I want to touch briefly on the question of rand manipulation. Rand manipulation is economic treason, because the rand manipulation has caused widespread and systematic poverty to our citizens. Let me tell you how. What these banks have done, they've made it a point, or they colluded and made it ukuba we need, or the companies operating in our country, they need to buy the dollar at high prices. Now, when these companies buy the dollar at high prices, it means the services and the products that are provided by these companies, the prices are going to increase. Now, once there's an increase in the prices, it causes inflation, which is the increase of prices. Now, that inflation, the Reserve Bank responds to inflation by increasing the repo rates. Now, once you increase the repo rates, it means the interest rates are going to be increased. Meaning, for all of the bonds, all of the car loans, all of the personal loans that you are going to have to pay higher prices as a result of rand manipulation. That is why the question of rand manipulation, we need to call it what it is. It is economic treason. And all of these banks that have committed economic treason, number one, they should not be allowed to practice. They should not be allowed, or licenses whereas they've caused economic treason. Secondly, the executives of these banks, they need to be criminally prosecuted, because they cannot be causing widespread poverty to our people and nothing happens. And what about this fine? Ukuba, they are going to be fined 43 million. What is 43 million to banks that were making almost 1 trillion rands a day? Go to America, go to the United Kingdom. Each and every bank that has been found, ukuba, they committed rand manipulation or the currency manipulation, they were fined in the region of billions. Come to South Africa, it is suggested ukuba they need to pay millions. That is nonsense. It is nonsensical ukuba institutions that led to our citizens taking their lives being fined a mere 43 million. 43 million is not even, it's nothing to these banks, because these banks are making above 1 billion rands profit per year, and you are only fining them 43 million. That is nonsensical. We've also got a problem of illicit financial flows, whereby companies are going to drain our country by not invoicing in South Africa. They are going to systematically drain our economy and take our profits, take our economy to other countries. However, our solution 7 are as follows. The first one, ukuba, under the ATM government, all of the service providers will be paid on time. We've got a problem whereby we've got SMMEs, when they want their invoices to be paid, their invoices are going to be paid after 120 days, or to a certain extent, kufuneka babhatale intshontsho for their invoices to be paid. That is going to end under the ATM government. The other solution that we have is that under the ATM government, we are going to extend the maritime territory in the Cape of Good Hope sea route in order to generate toll revenue. Egypt is making more than 100 billion US dollars per year from the Suez Canal, because every ship efuna udoka in the Suez Canal, it pays the toll fee. But come to the Cape of Good Hope, you realize ukuba as a country we are not making any use of that economic opportunity. And you are going to transform the structure of the economy to enable various players and remove barriers to entry for the economic participation in some industries. And we are going to enact a government policy that says government spending, at least 50% of the government spending must be towards SMMEs, because that is the way in order to create jobs and boost local economies. And we are going to make it compulsory for the local processing of our minerals, and we export only finished goods. And we are going to abolish the labor brokers, and we are going to have harsh penalties against all companies that are exploiting workers. Currently, we've got companies that violate all of the laws, whether it is labor, it is immigration, simply because they want to exploit workers. We are saying as the ATM, those companies are going to face the full might of the law, and we are going to abolish these labor brokers, because a labor brokering system is a modern day slavery. And you are going to establish a state-owned bank that is connected to communal banks to reshape the banking sector structure and provide marginalized communities with ownership and access to financial services. And we are going to regulate the digital industry, such as Uber or Airbnb, so that they are in line with our national interests. Currently, our drivers, which is our brothers and sisters that are driving Uber, they are not safe, they are neglected, they are marginalized. And when you look at how these companies are operating in other countries, Uber, when it's operating in the United Kingdom, a driver is regarded as a worker, meaning they get all of the benefits of working for Uber. But come to South Africa, a driver is not regarded as an employee or as a worker, meaning when a driver is hijacked, when a driver is involved in an accident, Uber does nothing. So we want to make it a point to Uber. These digital companies, when they come and operate in the South African economy, they must operate in line with our national interests. And we are going to ensure, Ukuba, in the creative sector, royalties are being paid to our actors and all of our creatives. And we are going to ensure, Ukuba, that sector is regulated so that you do not have a case of the producers that are exploiting the workers that are operating in that space. And we are going to transform the township and rural economy in order to ensure a mass economic participation of the citizens. And we are going to structure the informal sector in a way that protects the interests of the local and the indigenous people. And we are going to ensure, Ukuba, there is local production in each district of basic goods such as soap, towels, candles, clothes, footwear, milk, dairy products, in order to make sure, Ukuba, there are various players in the economy. You will recall, Ukuba, we used to have factories called Dimbaza, called Hammanskraal, Upper Ektuwa, called Kwakwa, and these factories were creating jobs for our people. Now, those factories were closed, and after those factories were closed, it means jobs were lost. What we're saying as the ATM, when it comes to this question, we must not have a case of East South Africa being an economic colony of other countries. We need to make it a point, Ukuba, some of the basic goods are produced locally in our country. We can't accept, Ukuba, you are going to have a toothpick that is imported from another country. We can't accept ukuba you are going to have almost all of our homes being made in China. Because currently, you've got your television is made in China. You've got your plate that you are using when you want to eat. It is made in China. Because of load shedding, you want to light a candle. It is made in China. Even the matches or light angayo, it is made in China. In other words, South Africa is a made in China. Kushota kubhalwe South Africa, made in China. The economy yalapha South Africa must be transformed so that South Africans are able to produce what they are going to utilize. And the best way to do that, it is not to have selected companies that are going to have monopoly of our products. That is why we are saying in each district. In other words, when you go to OR Tambo, you need to have a factory in OR Tambo that is providing all of these basic goods for the people of OR Tambo. When you go to Eamatole, the same thing must happen. When you go to Etswane, the same thing must happen. When you go Nhlanzeni in Mpumalanga, the same thing must happen. In other words, you are making diverse people participate in the economy instead of having few players in the economy. And we are also saying, ukuba the SMMEs and the cooperatives must benefit from their respective economies. You know, when you've got a child that goes to a private school, your private school will tell you, when you want to buy a uniform, go and buy from that company. When you want to buy an iPad, the school will tell you, go and buy from that company. Why is it that the government cannot say, for the schools ezikhoyo kutsolo, there are a group of cooperatives that are going to provide and supply a uniform for all of those schools? In other words, the uniforms, you are going to have abantu abohlukileyo, abaninzi, that are going to produce all of these goods and services that are used by the people. And what that will do, it will make people to be economically active. In other words, it will not make us to be economically dependent. That is why you are saying, ukuba the private sector is able to create an economic ecosystem that benefits their group of companies. The same thing we can do when it comes to how the government can say, if you are in a certain region, you want to uniform, you do not need to go to Mr. Price or UPEP or all of these companies. You can buy a uniform yabantwana bakho from cooperatives which are operated by abazali babantwana. The last one, servants. It is a question of peace, justice, safety, and security now. The reason why we are emphasizing, but all of this needs to happen now. It is because we are sick and tired of being prisoners in our own homes. Currently, firstly, the first problem is that we've got a constitution in South Africa that is based on compromise, not the will of the people. And there's high levels of crime, lawlessness, human trafficking, construction mafias, and human smuggling. You've got cross-border crimes, including vehicle, goods, and human trafficking. You've got this phenomenon of the protection fees. You know, this issue of protection fees, it is so rife to an extent whereby in some communities, once uthenga imoto, otsotsi bayaza pha kuwe, bathi sibhatala imali ethile ukuze le moto yakho ikwazi ukuhlala kakuhle. Ekhaya elitsha, you've got a problem whereby if unendlu phayana and behind wakhile iflats, let's say zi-5, otsotsi bayeza bathi jonga, njemba unezindlu ezi-5 orentisa ngazo, itu zezethu. You collect rent, but it's upper good. It is the same thing with the construction mafias. Whenever there's going to be a project, there are going to be these construction mafias that are going to go to people and say, 30% of this project comes to us. And they are not begging anyone. Meaning, this problem of the construction mafias and the protection fees is a big problem. You've also got a problem of the cash in transit heists. And maybe we need to ask, why is it that every time we are close to the election, we see an increase in these cash in transit heists? Because in other times, we don't see an increase in the cash in transit heists, but also on daily elections, there's a cash in transit heist every day. We've also got a problem of illegal mining, whereby communities are being terrorized by illegal miners. And we've also got a very big problem of these corrupt police officers. Because if police officers, some of them, they are working with drug dealers. Some of them, they are ruining the name of good policemen and women who are providing service to their people by working with the corrupt and working with the criminals. And there's a problem again of a delayed justice, whereby a person will be charged in 2020, but their case is going to be delayed for more than 10 years. And that is a problem we need to address. So, as a solution servants to all of this, we are saying that the first thing that we are going to do after the elections next year is to have a constitutional review process in order to make sure that we've got a constitution in our country that is a reflection of the people, not a constitution that is a product of a compromise and a settlement. And we are going to transform our justice system by elevating components of the African customary law in the modern society, especially in the villages. And we are going to introduce a justice-based capital punishment system so that bonke ababantu babulala abantu badlwengula abantu ngokungayekiyo, they must know ukuba i-death penalty ibalingene. Because you have people that are so brazen, they are going to kill people repeatedly because they know ukuba the law is on their side. A person will not respect a right to life of abantu, and they will say their right to life must be protected by the Constitution. Why must ababulali be protected whereas their victims are not protected? Why must we live in fear? Because these people are going to murder people, go to prison, come back after a few years and kill again, go back to prison and come back and kill again. The cycle is ophela nini. We need to make it a point, ukuba, if a person is a murderer, an unrepentant murderer, they must know ukuba under the ATM government, their days are numbered. The ATM government, difuna ibeka kahle lento servants, asuzudlala usweetheart nababulali. Asuzuthi xa sibona i-criminal umbulali sithi baby. A criminal will know ukuba they've got no space in the ATM government. Because the criminals now, they are skumnandi kubo, bayadakasa, simply because the law is protecting them. That is going to change. And we are going to make sure about their effective border controls in order to ensure legal movement of non-citizens and full enforcement of immigration laws in order to boost national security. And also, we are going to employ police reservists in order to fight crime and boost the visibility yamapolisa and increase the ratio of amapolisa to the citizens. And we are going to assist and empower the community policing forums, because some of these policing forums community policing forums. They are doing so much good work in terms of eradicating crime in their communities. They need to be supported. And we are going to deploy special police force task teams to protect and investigate lento yokubulawa kwenkosi. It can't be that inkosi zizobulawa left, right and center and thina asirespond. We are going to make sure ukuba zikhona i-task force that are there that are going to protect and investigate the killing of inkosi zethu. And we are going to ensure ukuba kukhona life sentence without the possibility of being released on parole for all of the drug dealers, corrupt police officers, as well as the public servants. Because currently, you've got a case whereby if umntu is dealing with drugs, kuvese kuthuleke kuthi cwaka. You saw almost ngexesha le-COVID. There was a time whereby abantu went baluta the products. The government went and collected all of the foods, all of the items, and they banned them. But whenever there's crystal meth, there's drugs, there's nyaope, that has been found, we never see all of those drugs being destroyed. Simply because drugs and drug dealers have got free space to operate in our country. And the reason why we are saying, Kukuba, all of these drug dealers, when a drug dealer is taken to prison, they must go to prison up until dilika jele. Because all of these drugs, whose future are they killing? They are killing the future of our country. We see abantwana bethu now, abanye kuthiwa zinyawupe boys, simply because of the drugs. And abantwana bethu did not manufacture these drugs themselves. They were introduced to these drugs by these criminals. Now, it cannot be that we are going to hate abantwana bethu over something abafakwe kuyo. Let us go to the source, which is the drug dealers. When you go to other countries, when you come to the issue of drugs, and all of the drug dealers, they are responded to by the death penalty. Go to Philippines, they've got a zero tolerance towards the drugs. But come to South Africa, we have never seen not even one raid. Kusitwa, there's a force that went to endaweni ethile to inspect ukuba akuthengiswa drugs. That is why ATM, when it comes to the issue of drugs, let it be known we are going to deal decisively with all of these drug dealers. Kuyafana nalama polisa that are committing crime, because you cannot be given, a position of trust by the state and you abuse that responsibility for your own selfish needs. And lastly, we are going to ensure ukuba we deploy the SAPS and SNDF to crime-rampant areas where illegal mining, human and drug trafficking, forced prosecution, hijacking of buildings, and production of counterfeit products are taking place. And also, we are going to bring about a labor convict system whereby all of amabanjwa abazufika ejele bakekheleze. All of the criminals, all of the prisoners, when they go to jail, they need to pay for wronging society. They need to work for the state for free. Because currently, it is us, taxpayers, it is abantu that are abiding by the law, abasebenzela amabanjwa. How can it be, ukuba you have a system whereby the one that is law-abiding uzobulaleka ukuza provide for the one ongahloniphanga umthetho? Because in that prison, what happens in prison? A prisoner has got 3 meals a day. A prisoner has got no load shedding. Whereas when, as a taxpayer, you've got load shedding. A prisoner has got access to water, whereas you don't have water. But all of these things, they are provided by you, because it is your taxes that are funding the livelihood and the well-being of the prisoners. But what do the prisoners do in return? Abenzinto. Under the ATM government, immediately a prisoner goes to prison, they need to realize ukuba they are going to work for the state for free. Asuzu hlonipha umthetho apha, sihloniphela usebenzela amabanjwa. Leyo into must come to an end. In conclusion, servants, the kind of the country that your children will inherit depends on the decisions that you take today. If there's one thing that we need to realize, there is no one that is going to save our country ngaphandle kwethu. We need to realize ukuba